my heart wants to go, man, I got more to do. I got more to do. And if I kind of get enough done, because there's never not something to do, right? There's always more. If I get enough done, then I kind of feel like, yeah, I can rest a little bit. And if I'm being honest, when I get my stuff done, when the to-do list gets more finished, I feel somehow much better about myself.
Okay.
And I feel a little bit like, especially if it's like spiritual work or church
Sure.
work, whatever, I kind of feel like, hey, I got all that done. I think, I would never say it, but I think God's probably a little more happier with me. You know, like I feel a little closer to God, like I approach God a little more boldly because guess what? I got all that done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't sit there with a checklist like, don't pray until you do these things because then God will have to answer them.
Sure.
It's not that blatantly creepy, but that's what's behind the Sabbath. So is Sabbath for today? Absolutely. Because does God want the perfect relationship between us that he always created us to have with him? And does he want us to believe he's for us, not because of what we do, but because of who he created us to be in him and now recreated in Christ? Absolutely.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple Podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
Pete, what's going on today, my friend?
Man, we got some fun stuff to talk about. Sabbath rest.
Is Ozzy Osbourne still alive? That guy's old, bro.
He's really old.
I didn't know you listened to that. You're a Christian, man. You got to burn that. Break those records.
I used to have to, when I was in high school, they had us smash CDs. This is a side note, but you would smash CDs and the amount of shatter would represent how much demonic influence was in that particular.
Are you kidding?
Not joking.
So it used to be easy to break like a record, but
Yeah.
you could smash like a CD on the ground with a hammer and it just bounces. Like, I can't get it to break. Let's get a fire,
I didn't have any of the really, really bad
When,
ones.
when I was a young Christian and sort of influenced by the times, I took my really awesome 70s, 80s record collection of everything in the world and got rid of it because you're supposed to.
Oh.
Now it's all I listen to on Spotify,
You're like, I wish I would have kept those.
Anyway, sorry about the Sabbath rabbit trail here.
No, man, let's jump in. So we hear a lot about Sabbath, and we know that it's one of the 10 Commandments, number 4, yet it's something that we pretty blatantly ignore.
Yeah, why is that? Like, we take it as a suggestion,
Yeah.
It's actually mentioned in connection to the 10 Commandments twice. It's kind of like in there, and then after the 10 Commandments are given, then God says to Moses, oh yeah, like when he's heading back down the mountain, oh yeah, and don't forget to keep Sabbath.
If you've got time.
Yeah, right? No kidding. And then in the law, like the law global, the Sabbath's brought up more than anything in the world, like in the whole law. And so what I've always wondered is why do we take that one, though, as more of a suggestion?
Yeah.
Like you already mentioned, like we're cool with the others, like don't murder. Like we would never go like, that murder thing, I got to get a handle on that.
Yeah.
Like I
getting out of
suck
control.
at murdering people. But like I can just say right now, I suck at taking Sabbaths.
Yeah.
I mean, I take time, quote, off of work. But as we're going to talk about today, that's really different. Just not working and vegging out in front of like, Seinfeld marathon or something, like, or, whatever. That's not Sabbathing.
Sure.
And so I don't know why it is that we take it as that, but I think we're going to talk about it because I've studied this a lot and tried to really get a handle on this for our communities and my own family. And I still ain't great at it, but I'm starting to understand why God was so awesome about it, why he was really all about, hey, you need to pray.
Yeah.
And so what does this modern day Sabbath look like? Is it don't move your ox, and if someone falls in a crack in the side of the road or you see an accident, like, sorry, it's Saturday, or it's, hey, sorry, it's Sunday, or whatever day you think the Sabbath was supposed to be.
No moving your oxen on Sundays.
I did notice that. I was going to just a little bit of accountability between brothers. I was driving past your house the other day, and I did see you out cutting the grass on Sunday, bro.
I know.
Like with an ox. And that was really the weird part. I was actually talking
still
about
being
the
sanctified.
word. Why are you using an ox? And like, an oxen, when you say it that way.
Plural. So you just mentioned this concept of a modern day Sabbath. First question is the Sabbath just like this really old school Bible command that was back in Exodus that we're not supposed to pay much attention to? Or is it something that God still desires for us to have as a natural rhythm of our life even today?
Okay, so yeah, it is still for today, but it was just like all the other law. It all pointed to like the reality of when Christ comes and makes it all right again and sorts it out in our hearts and gets our motivations right. The law was like to kind of give us like, here's the list, like set in stone, literally, like I'm going to carve it in a rock with my finger and then you're going to carry that around. It's really heavy. And so the Sabbath was always connected to who God is and who he created us to be and what kind of relationship he intended for us to have. So we always want to beat up on the Pharisees, whatever, but it wasn't just them, but
Sure.
they saw, oh, well, there it is, like they're again, like your oxen can't move it around, or something falls in a crack or someone has need or it can't eat because you had to pick that grain to eat it. Oh my God,
Yeah.
like, well, it wasn't in the bowl anymore, whatever. It was never about that. It was always about, and everything is, who is God? What's he about? Who did he create us to be? And what kind of relationship is he desiring? So Sabbath is a cool one because check this out, right in the creational order, Adam and Eve are created on which day?
6.
Sixth. And then the seventh day was what?
The rest.
Day of rest. So Adam and Eve are created on the sixth day. And then God said, this is amazing. He looked at everything and said, this is really good. And then he took a day off and he kind of said, and this is going to be a day of rest for all of my creation. So then we hear, though, about the whole creation story. But then God, he shared his authority and gave Adam and Eve, control and authority over all of it, right? The garden, the earth, the animals, the plants. He got to name the animals. But notice, their first day on the job was the day off. And then they worked. And in the Jewish calendar, the Sabbath day was always the first day of the week. And kind of ours is too. We look at Sundays, the first day of the week.
Sure.
But really, we go man, I'm working all week and then working for the weekend. TGIF, man.
Yeah, we're working for that day off.
So we rest from work, but God's creational order was that you work from rest. Think about how different that really is.
Yeah.
Now, why did he set it up that way? Because he wants, and this is sort of how our faith fits into all of life. God wanted us to know, you don't have to do anything to be mine. You don't have to do to be. You don't have to perform for me to love you or give you authority or share my life with you. Day of rest, and from your rest you will work. Because now you can rest not trying to earn or perform or stress or freak for status or party. Status, Adam and Eve were image bearers put in charge of everything. Yep. Naked and unashamed, gonna live forever. What else do you need? And so there's this creational order of, okay, God wants a relationship where you rest in him. And he knew we would forget that. He knew that the way the world would be, and even our own sinful hearts get after this, where we want to work hard to be.
Sure.
And so that's why it's in the law, it's in the 10 Commandments. God reminds us, hey, and don't forget to take a Sabbath, because our kind of creepy, sinful hearts.
Just flip it backwards, yeah.
We always want to flip it backwards. And just think of, you worked for a church. I've done that for years.
Sure.
Still, full-time ministry. My heart wants to go, man, I got more to do. And if I kind of get enough done, because there's never not something to do, right? There's always more. If I get enough done, then I kind of feel like, yeah, I can rest a little bit. And if I'm being honest, when I get my stuff done, when the to-do list gets more finished, I feel somehow much better about myself.
Okay.
And I feel a little bit especially if it's spiritual work or church work or whatever, I kind of feel like, hey, I got all that done. I think, I would never say it, but I think God's probably a little more happier with me. I feel a little closer to God, I'd approach God a little more boldly, because guess what? I got all that done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't sit there with a checklist don't pray until you do these things, because then God will have to answer them.
Sure.
It's not that blatantly creepy, but
there's this underlying absolutely.
But that's what's behind the Sabbath. So is Sabbath for today? Absolutely, because does God want the perfect relationship between us that he always created us to have with him? And does he want us to believe he's for us, not because of what we do, but because of who he created us to be in him and now recreated in Christ? Absolutely. Remember when Jesus came, he said, I didn't come to get rid of the law.
Yeah.
I came to fill it full. Yeah, fill full the law. So that thing you were trying to accomplish by, too bad your ox cart fell in the thing, but someone's going to steal it this weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
You remember that? That was never the point. The point was, can you take time to reset your heart and be reminded of, by resting, hey, God's got this. Years ago, this, all the, the corny church signs, or where the stuff out on the side of the road, and you're like, oh, geez, thanks for the help, right? And a lot of our listeners are going, our church has that. I love
Please
that.
stop.
Sorry, please stop. There was the church magnets and all that stuff too, the Christian magnets go on your fridge. But a friend of mine had one, and it's corny, but I never forgot it. And I think you put your name in it or something like that. So it says, good morning, Caesar. I'll be handling everything today, and I won't be needing your help. God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Sabbath's a little bit about that.
Sure.
It's I got this. And you show that you trust me when you take some time to rest and reconnect your heart to me. That shows me that you're believing I don't require you to perform for me.
Yeah, let's press into that a little bit, because you just mentioned this concept of rest, and it's really easy for us to make even Sabbath law, right? In the sense of Well, does that mean you can't be on your cell phone? Does that mean you can't,
Yeah.
plan a trip with your family because that's work, and driving to get to the wherever destination you're going is work? What does a healthy theology of rest look like? But also, how do you keep yourself from falling into the trap of trying to over legislate your own Sabbath? Like what, my wife's like, well, get off your phone. This is a family day. And I go, well, can I respond to text with my friends? Can I, how would you put parameters over what rest looks like?
Yeah. Good question, man. I think maybe I just kind of gave us a bit of the theology end of it because it's about who God is, and he's our creator, and what he desires from us in a relationship. That's what all the law was about, and that's what Sabbath is about, is that he desires for us a close relationship. And he knows that if we never take a break that, we will forget about him, that we will start to think, and there's scripture that backs all this up, right? It is by my hands that I have created all these things.
Yeah.
And we start to forget, no, it's like you put a dead seed in dirt that you didn't create, and then I rained on it and, flooded it with sunshine, and 9 weeks later, you're eating like a feast. And so we maybe aren't all farmers these days, but it's the same principle. So the theology is, who do we think God is? Who does he believe we are? And what does the relationship look like? What does he want us to be?
Yeah.
And do we believe him? Do we trust him enough on the front end to say, if he created us and day one was like, okay, day of rest, and then from there we'll work. Do we believe him that we weren't actually created to manage 77777? Or did he create us to be like, no, you're actually wired for 1 off, 6 on, 1 off, 6 on.
And not one partial off. It's
well, and there again, that's where your second part of your question, we can get into the weird, like rigid, like managing of that. The concept and the understanding of Sabbath for us, I believe, in Christ, isn't that you set your timer and you can't do any work from like midnight to midnight or noon to noon.
Sure.
Tina and I were on a cruise ship once with a couple, and they were Jewish and pretty serious about it, but they tried to keep Torah. They tried to keep Shabbat.
Okay.
Right, which is Sabbath for them.
Sure.
And so they could do no work on the Sabbath, which in their understanding was Saturday, right, which is actually traditional, accurate. And so even check this out, on the cruise ship, because their door to their cabin was electric and they couldn't use electricity on Sabbath in their mind, they couldn't swipe their card to get the door open. So they had to leave the door open all day to their stateroom.
Huh.
And I said, why don't you just have the person open it? And like, well, but then we're asking our servant, quote unquote, to outwork on a Sabbath. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they was super rigid about it. And when I asked them about, what about the other 342 laws? Like, yeah, we're not so good at keeping those, but we try hard on this one,
Bravo.
Yeah. So we can make everything rigid. So is it good to have like a whole day where you try to set aside a day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. God did it. And he said, hey, forget. But his concept wasn't about like, now run the clock.
Sure.
And as soon as it's over, get back to stressing and freaking. It's really about, do we trust God, and are we setting aside time, like intentionally, not like my schedule often where I take it as a suggestion, but are we saying, God, you're God, you're right, you love us, and you've said, I created you this way. Like, you're going to get fried, you're going to get frazzled without it, and you're going to forget about my goodness and love, and you're going to easily slip into thinking you have to earn my love and affection. And so it's not about that. And I think how we keep it from getting that, is that Sabbath should be fun.
Yeah.
When we started putting some of the stuff together in early Soma Communities days, one of our rhythms was recreate. And it's this idea of rest and create. Out of our rest, we create. Now, sometimes we say out of our rest, we work, right?
Sure.
But we almost called that rhythm of life, which was meant to be Sabbath, we almost called it play.
Huh. That's cool.
Because think about it. If God is really God and he's got us, and he's our provider, it doesn't matter what we work and how hard we work, but he says, I got you. You're my kids.
Yeah.
Then when we would take time off to be reminded of that and his goodness and reconnect our hearts to him, it should be super fun. And so keep that in mind. If you're going like, that's it, kids, put all the games away, and you're just sitting there like around, like the table on the couch, and your kids are like, I hate this. I hate God because of this.
Saturdays.
I hate Sabbath. Like, can we listen to some Sabbath? So it's not about that. It's about, what are you doing that is restorative? What are you doing that reconnects you back to like trust?
Yeah. Pushes you back to that.
Right? And are you demonstrating that trust?
We tend to take on such an individualistic approach to even spirituality, especially here in America.
Even spirituality? I mean, especially.
Especially, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, that's an interesting reminder. Something I've never thought of was finding that rhythm that fits your family need. I mean, that's something, talk to your wife too. Like, what does a Sabbath look like for us? Maybe it's not, you have to put your emails down. Maybe it's, hey, we're going to agree as a family that we don't do this together on these days.
Yeah. So what if one day you're going like, hey, we've got some goals for this and we really want to start protecting them because we believe God created us a certain way.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be healthier, happier, more connected to him and his heart and his mission, which is going to make us closer and less stressful. We believe that.
Yeah.
So some of the stress we're feeling, some of the conflict maybe in our relationships between, dad and our kids or husband and wife, could it be because we're actually trying to recreate creational order every week? So what if it's like, hey, the reality is we do communicate through certain devices now and different things happen, but we're going to say on this one day, we're just going to say, this is when we'll do it. We'll do it early and we'll trust God. We'll put it away and we'll check it again later. It's okay, but we'll just agree to that. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going to like forsake the reality of a culture we live in. Like, hey, it's dark. I can't flip on a light switch.
Sure.
Got to go out and get light a candle. Well, what's the difference? Really?
work too.
Yeah. So it's not about that, but could we begin to create healthy rhythms where we go, we're going to have some fun and a little bit, I'm going to talk about how I've tried to get at that and try to order some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to also say, Heath, like, I think that, it's kind of like trying to mandate, hey, it's family devotional. It's like, oh boy. But I'm not having devotions. I'm not spending time in the word or in prayer with God.
Sure.
But I'm going to mandate it out of my family or whatever. I think when it comes to Sabbathing, and especially maybe as dads, I don't know, I'm just, speaking to us as dads here for a second. I think we have to be making sure we're carving out that time. So what if like, hey, Saturday or I don't know, whatever it is your Sabbath day with your family?
Yeah.
Do you get up and do you have some Sabbath yourself first? You know what? Every Saturday, so my heart's right with God, and I'm kind of anchored back in that trust. Then I enter in the rest of the day with my family, and I can actually lead them into Sabbath instead of like, give me 10 more minutes. I just got a little bit more work to do, and we're going to Sabbath. What if you just go like, no, I'm going to go ahead and trust God. I'm going to get up that extra hour early, going for a walk every Saturday morning, rain or shine, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to get connected. I'm going to like notice some beauty, and I'm going to count some blessings, and I'm going to thank God for each of my kids and my wife. And sure, there's stuff that could change and get fixed and could be better and all that, but I'm going to thank him, and I'm going to say, wow, you are the provider. You have shown your love this whole week.
Yep.
And then I'm going to go into the day, and maybe, maybe it's not the whole day. Maybe you're going to say like, it's Sabbath afternoon,
Sure.
or it's, it's Sabbath Saturday morning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do some stuff that's really fun, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to intentionally reconnect our hearts to God and his goodness. So it's a time of sort of counting our blessings. And maybe it's a time of just telling them, hey, because even looking at like old school law, Sabbath was a time of rest and worship. Yeah. And what's worship? Does it mean we have to sit around and sing songs? Well, we could. But worship, the core of that word is worthship. It's giving God his worth.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's kind of like looking over my whole life and going, God, you did that. God, you gave us that.
Yep.
God, I wouldn't have this relationship, with Tina or with Kathleen if it weren't for you. I wouldn't have these beautiful kids that are going to honor you and bring a wonderful legacy. That's all from your hand.
Yeah. That's really good.
And so I think about it. How many days or weeks have you ever gone like, I never thought about all that. I sort of take all that for granted. Not only do I take the people, the gifts for granted, but kind of even creepier, I take the giver for granted. That's what Sabbath's all about, man. Yeah. So what if you had to have an hour of Sabbath and then maybe a half a day of Sabbath? And what if you get eventually to go, this is so valuable. We're getting better at Sabbathing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man, I read this article the other day by Christine Organ in Relevant Magazine. She was talking about a modern day Sabbath and what that looks like. A question that she brings up, I'd love to get your thoughts on, is she mentions that one of the most challenging parts of observing the Sabbath in today's day and age is that it's overcoming a dependence on instant gratification and distraction. What other benefits?
Wow.
That's
stop
pretty
there.
Heavy hitter, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for tuning in,
What other benefits do you think there are to resting well?
Wow, that's a whole other episode in a sense, because that kind of leads to what's consumerism really all about. And my consumeristic nature is gimme, 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 gimme. Make me feel a certain way in the moment. So like I observe myself and I observe my kids and others. We're watching a movie, like, yeah, I totally want to watch this movie. Queued up, done,
Yeah.
And then we're all watching the movie, quote unquote, enjoying it, whilst also having to check Facebook and a little Pinterest or Instagram feeds or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not enough. I need a little of this. And I think she's absolutely right. Thanks, Christine, for that. But see, this is the human heart. Part of the distraction, say like back in the agricultural days and maybe for Israel, is I just can't be overcome with, but the sheep were fed yesterday, and what if they're out of food?
Yeah.
Or the goats are bad, they want more. It's like, they'll be cool till tomorrow. My instant gratification would be, go feed them, because I want to be a little plumper, so when I take them to market in 3 months, I'm going to get a little more per pound, and blah, blah, blah. It's really no different. It's like, what does my heart want, and can I provide it in the moment?
Yep.
And we're becoming increasingly addicted to instant input, nonstop gratification. In fact, we should do an episode on, are we
Consumerism,
addicted
yeah.
to approval, right?
Yeah.
That's, we are. Human approval is one thing, but we don't get as much as we kind of want and think we deserve. So now we
Sure.
get it through everything else. And so I think she's absolutely right. Now, to the second part of your question, what are other benefits are there to resting well? Physical. I
Yep.
mean, oh my gosh, we're the most overweight nation, I think, in the planet and the wealthiest. And part of being overweight is we've just got too much time on our hands and we're looking for instant gratification, and stress adds to weight and freaking about it. All that stuff we know about, right? I'm not trying to shame anybody or hammer that. And I got a few pounds to lose and all that, right?
Right.
Part of it is, did God create us a certain way? Does he know not only do your hearts get weird and spun around, but it also starts to deteriorate your body because you were created for 1 off, 6 on, 1 off, 6 on. And you've chosen to go mostly 7, 7, 7, a little time off here, 7, 7, a week off, 7, 7,
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not created for that. So I think there's relational benefits to when we get our hearts right. I know for some people, part of their Sabbath is they connect deeply with another believer or believing couple or family, and together they get their hearts and their focus right. And they might do something. Hey, we're going to plant a garden together today. Oh, that's work. That's not the point.
Yep.
Right? That's not the point. Is can we be having fun and playing and creating in ways that give God glory because we're resting in him.
Yeah.
Because I believe there's other stuff that could be done, but God is sovereign over it.
Yep.
And he's my provider. Can I play with the kids? Can I have fun? Can we plant a garden together? And it doesn't have to be done by 3 because the game's on. Could it just be
It's there.
done?
Yeah, that makes me think too about, we're going to get here into the big 3 in just a second, but one of the other benefits that I've noticed in my life is the opportunity to invite my neighbors and friends into the Sabbath as well, where we pack up and we go, hey, Saturday's our day off. We're going to go camping together. We're going to go for a hike together, and actually inviting those in your circle of influence to participate in a Sabbath as well. Like, hey, we're going to shut our phones off, go see nature, go explore. So it's a great opportunity for us to invite others into Sabbath with us.
Yeah, let me say one other thing before we get into the big 3.
Sure.
Cool? Again, I have to just say I pretty much suck at Sabbathing. I don't rest very well.
Yeah.
I tend to like veg or stop working, but I kind of forget the important part of that, and that's to reconnect my own heart. So there's some conviction dropping on me even as we record this again.
Yeah.
I'm getting away this weekend with my family, and it's going to be, we won't be working at all, but it won't necessarily be Sabbathing in there.
Sure.
But now I'm going to have some new intentionality. I need my community, and I'm going to probably have my family as well, which are part of that community in Oikos.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask them to say, hey, let's help each other to rest and reconnect, this
Yep.
weekend in a true way. Here's another thing. Tina and I, in the last few years, have really tried to sort of meta Sabbath, I'll say, by planning out our year
Okay.
of rest before we plan out our year of work.
Oh, that's cool.
So like we actually, we're in that process right now because we're just starting to look at next year in life, but come fall, we will plan out all of our vacations and time off and family stuff the best we can.
First.
Yeah, first,
Yep.
before we say, okay, I'm going to go to this conference or I'm going to speak here, or let's go ahead and jam that giant project, or, I'm going to write a new book in the fall or whatever,
Yeah.
It's like, you can't write it then because we're going to be on vacation, or we can't write it then because we've just taken a week off to rest
Yeah.
and reconnect our hearts. And so we're trying to work from rest. Now that's the meta, right? And,
Yep.
and we're getting better at that. Like we're on I think year 3 of doing that, and it's feeling better. It's feeling like, hey, we're prioritizing what God said we need to, and that's rest. And that's starting to trickle into other areas of life. Like I was just having this conversation. Friday's supposed to be a day off for me, and I take other time off, but it's supposed to be a day off. But it's not been a Sabbath rest, and I generally cheat it, and I just jam lots of work in there,
Sure.
and kind of feel guilty about what I'm not getting done, and feel guilty about I should be resting,
Yep.
at the same time. So I just want to share with our friends
helpful,
here
man.
that I'm not great at this. Not everybody's great at it, but we can. And in the big 3, I'll give you some tips on how to get going.
Yeah. Okay, so the big 3, this is something we do with every episode. It's basically 3 things that people can take away right now in light of today's discussion. And you can get this download for free by going to everydaydisciple.com/big3. You can do it now when you pull over your car. Caesar, what are the big 3 for this week?
So first one, know that you were created to work from rest, not rest from work. Know that. That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's the creational order. That's how God's wired you. And the reason we're so often living these freaked out, frazzled lives is because we are not designed to sustain the pressures of nonstop work without resting our minds and our bodies and souls. Just got to know that.
Yep.
So we still get to like freak out over work, but just know you're not wired for it. So that car that you want to super overload with stuff and put on the fake hitch and drag a giant trailer, you'll get by with it for a while. You're going to burn that tranny out. You know,
Sure.
like, it's going to happen. Secondly, believe that Christ has done all the most important work on your behalf already.
It's good, man.
And when I say all the most important work, I mean he has taken your sin upon himself. You're forgiven. You're restored to dad. That relationship is wide open now,
Yep.
right? So that's the most important work. It was done on the cross. He's already done it. You do not have to work to be your own provision or to gain his acceptance, to gain the Father's love, or to have value in his eyes. Just got to believe that.
It's great.
Right? That's
Yep.
hard, but that's the center of the gospel. And then third, so the hands part of it, begin to set aside a time each week to do no work. That's kind of how I get it around my head. Do no work that's part of your normal job. So for me, the beginning of starting to get a Sabbath time is like, since I tend to work a lot online and write and
Sure.
check out our podcast site and all this stuff and work on Tweak and all that, I won't do any of that on a Sabbath day. Just like I might be working in the yard a little bit or whatever, but I'm not going to touch my work.
Yep.
It's not physical activity that we're necessarily to sustain. It's not the point. So maybe start with a few hours on your day off. Spend time having fun, doing restorative activities. And again, vegging out in front of your TV or binge watching Seinfeld marathons, not a good Sabbath rest.
Yeah.
It's the not working part, but it's not the reconnecting to trust part.
Yeah.
Be sure to intentionally spend some time with God alone each week. And guess what? He's really waiting to be with you.
That's so good, man. Next week, we have a really fun episode. Is missional still a thing and why it still scares pastors to death?
Yeah, everybody's trying to define it. And I know it's not new for some people, but I'm surprised at how many people it still is like missional. You mean like getting your kids ready to go overseas for a summer camp in Mexico or in Europe or whatever. I guess Mexico's not overseas. But yeah,
some.
what is missional? I want to redefine that next week.
Yeah.
And then, why it's so freaking scary, actually.
We need some like a dun-dun-dun sound effects.
Maybe we'll get some sound effects next week. All right.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.